Hey guys, it's Celestia, and I've heard a lot of people online talking about art regression lately. Unfortunately, a lot of it has been in the form of people calling out their fellow artists for supposedly experiencing it, criticizing them without prompting on the basis that their most recent work appears to be getting worse rather than better when compared to their previous work. The art community being hypercritical of any perceived decline in the quality of their peers' art is nothing new, with several relatively well-known artists coming to mind immediately as prime examples of individuals who have been called out for their supposed art regression. And while I'd prefer not to name names simply because doing so isn't pertinent to the topic at hand, suffice it to say that they, anonymous for this video's purposes or not, are walking proof that accusations of art regression have always been thrown around by and at artists online. But the recent resurgence of people discussing it, criticizing others for it, and fearing it themselves got me thinking, because the more I listen to the way people talk about art regression, the more I notice the same misconceptions surrounding it popping up over and over again. It seems like a lot of people fundamentally misunderstand what art regression actually is, and as a result, throw the term around when it isn't actually applicable at all. They accuse artists of getting worse and fear the same for themselves, without recognizing that what they're witnessing or experiencing might not be art regression at all, but something else entirely. That's not always the case, of course. Art regression, or the degradation of an artist's skills and the quality of their current work compared to their earlier work, is absolutely a real thing. Just like any skill, if it isn't maintained, practiced, and further developed, your ability to create art can decline and diminish over time, leaving your most recent work to appear slightly or even significantly worse than what you created previously, when those skills were actively being honed. There's a reason so many artists are afraid of experiencing art regression, and it's because it's a very real risk in certain circumstances. But in my opinion, in the majority of cases I've seen, art regression isn't actually what's happening when people call each other out for it or claim to be experiencing it themselves. There are quite a few other things that may be responsible for artists feeling that the quality of their work has declined when it really hasn't, all of which should be considered as potential possibilities before they start kicking themselves for getting worse at art or criticizing others for the same. There are absolutely instances in which artists do get worse rather than better over time for a multitude of different reasons, and I will be discussing them. But I feel like in the vast majority of cases, when an artist feels like they're getting worse or drags another artist for getting worse, there's more at play than just potential art regression, and something else altogether might be the cause. That in mind, in today's video, I'm going to discuss what art regression is, some potential causes of it and how to handle them, and a few alternate explanations for why artists might be feeling like their work has gotten worse when it really hasn't. And hopefully by the end of it, I'll have been able to offer some possible solutions to resolve those fears or feelings of regression that might help artists be a little kinder and more understanding to both themselves and each other. We'll see. That's the goal, anyway. But first, let me take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Skillshare. Because if you're worried that your art is getting worse, whether it really is or not, it can't hurt to give your art skills a refresher just in case. And there's no better place to make that happen than on Skillshare, the largest online learning community out there that offers creatives everywhere access to thousands of classes taught by industry experts throughout any field you can imagine, from illustration and design to film and content creation. It is officially summer, if you haven't noticed, and for many that means school breaks, slower work schedules, and as a result, more free time to devote to creative pursuits. Whether you want to use that time to take up a new hobby, learn a new skill, start a new side hustle, or just take your art skills to the next level and avoid the very art regression we'll be talking about today, you can make that happen on Skillshare. I mean, it's summer. There's never been a better time to turn your creative I want tos into I made it happens, something their wide array of classes makes easier than ever. Not only do they have individual classes for anything you could possibly want to learn, they even offer dedicated learning paths tailored to provide students with every class they could possibly need to develop a specific skill or proficiency. So regardless of your learning goals, they have options that work for you. I have taken many classes on Skillshare myself over the years, learning everything from new illustration techniques to video editing to how to make digital art brushes. But the most recent class that I checked out is perfect for anyone struggling with art regression. Learn to Draw: Daily Practices to Improve Your Drawing Skills by Gabrielle Brickley. It's perfect for artists of any skill level because she breaks down the fundamentals in a way that's both easy to understand and easy to apply directly to your art, and suggests exercises specifically designed to make sure your skills as an artist are always improving, with lessons on everything from breaking complex objects down into simple forms, utilizing negative space well, understanding color and values, copying masters, drawing from both reference and imagination, and so much more. There's something for everyone. Beginners learning something new, practiced artists getting valuable refreshers, and everyone in between. It's linked in the description for anyone interested, and I would strongly encourage you to check it out. Ultimately, regardless of what you want to learn, I can say with confidence that Skillshare is the best place to learn it, something I'm excited to give you guys a chance to figure out for yourselves, because the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today and see what new hobbies and passions you can fall in love with this summer, because there's no time like the present to take your creative skills to the next level. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and please go check them out, because you don't want to miss your chance to get started with your online learning journey today. But while using Skillshare's classes is an excellent way to keep your art skills from getting worse, it's not the only one. Throughout the rest of the video, we'll discuss not only the biggest causes of legitimate art regression, but also the ways to stop or avoid it altogether if it is indeed something you're experiencing. Before we do though, I want to first go over some of the biggest reasons you might feel like your art is getting worse when it really isn't. Because I feel like with so much pressure to always be improving for fear of facing both your own disappointment and the scrutiny of others liable to call out your so-called art regression if you don't, artists are so scared of that art regression that they're seeing it where it isn't. For some, they're simply so anxious about their skills deteriorating that they perceive them as already having done so when they haven't. But for others, they're experiencing something else altogether that they're misinterpreting as art regression. So to hopefully help you figure out whether what you're dealing with really is art regression or not, let's go over some of the biggest reasons I know of that might make you feel like your art is getting worse when it isn't. The first is simple. You're dealing with low self-esteem and a lack of confidence. If you're already insecure about your skill or lack thereof as an artist, you're more inclined to see only your artistic weaknesses and none of your strengths, leading you to perceive mostly or even solely the mistakes in your art rather than any improvement that may be present. There's a lot of value in being able to view your work critically, observing and analyzing any aspects that you could have done better so that you can figure out how to in the future. It's a necessary skill for any artist seeking improvement to develop, and one that proves infinitely valuable. But when those mistakes are the only thing that you're allowing yourself to see because you're so hypercritical of them that they overshadow any and all aspects that turned out well, you're more inclined to perceive your art as getting worse rather than better simply because you're unable to see any of the ways it has gotten better, and only the ways it's failed to. Artists are our own worst critics, and in small doses, that helps us to grow. But in too large of doses, an overly critical perception of our own art leaves us thoroughly unable to view it objectively, often leading to us feeling as if it's gotten worse, not because it really has, but simply because we're so focused on the ways in which it hasn't gotten better that we can't see the ways that it has. The solution is just as simple as the problem itself. You need to work on your confidence and self-esteem just as much, if not more, than you need to work on your art. If you're so unwilling to see any quality, growth, or value in your work that you're blind to the ways in which it is improving, there's really nothing anyone can tell you to change your mind. The only way to break out of that mindset is to be conscious of it and notice and confront overtly negative thoughts that you're having about your art. It could help to deliberately try to find one good thing for every bad thing that you notice in each piece. If you look at a piece of art you just finished and immediately list 20 things you hate about it that you could have done better and leave it at that, of course you're going to feel like you're not improving and might even be getting worse. But if you then take the time to force yourself to list another 20 things you like about it that you did well, it will gradually become easier to accept that artistic growth simply isn't linear, and there are going to be things that you like and dislike about every piece, none of which should automatically suggest that your skills are deteriorating. And if even then you sincerely can't tell whether your art is getting worse or better, it can't hurt to ask someone so long as you're open to hear their honest response. I've seen so many posts online of people asking, "Am I experiencing art regression?" showing their work, and having the comments be a plethora of people saying things like, "Sure, these new areas need work compared to the previous pieces, but you're not getting worse, that's just part of growing as an artist. Here's an even longer list of the ways that you have improved." Getting that feedback from an unbiased third party who can objectively analyze your work in ways that you may be too blinded by your bias to notice can help you not only accept that you're not getting worse, but even pinpoint areas in need of improvement for you to work on. It is important, however, to make sure that you're asking qualified people for their input. It's easy for a layman to look at your art with no experience or knowledge and say, "Yeah, that's worse," or "No, that's better," based on their personal preferences and visual appeal alone, unintentionally missing specific areas in which you either improved or regressed because they don't have the skill or understanding to notice them. Other artists are much more experienced and well-equipped to provide more helpful feedback, so I always recommend asking peers for that feedback rather than friends or family that, while they may be happy to give input, may lack the artistic experience necessary to provide helpful input. The next reason you might think your art is getting worse when it isn't is very related to that lack of confidence and self-esteem, and it's that you're setting unrealistic expectations for your own improvement. Trust me when I say I understand the pressure that artists often place upon themselves to develop their skills as quickly and as prominently as possible, because no one likes to feel like their work is constantly falling short of the vision they have for it in their heads, and everyone wants to have the skills necessary to avoid that outcome as soon as they can. It's something I've dealt with extensively myself, and still do all the time. But if your goals for your own growth are so lofty that you expect each piece you make to show impossibly massive improvement upon the last, and look about as close to perfect as it possibly can, you're not only going to be consistently disappointed in yourself for not meeting your own impossible expectations, you may even be so disappointed in that feeling of failure that you can't see any of the ways in which you're succeeding. If your only goal is to go from jogging casually to placing first in a 30-kilometer marathon, you're not going to see how impressive it is that you managed to place 25th or go faster than you ever have before. You're just going to see that you didn't place first and think you failed. Art is no different. If you have such high expectations for each piece you make that you tolerate nothing less than mastery and perfection from your finished work, you're never going to be able to recognize the ways in which that work does show growth, if it's not anywhere near as much growth as you wanted. And in that case, you may perceive your art as getting worse when in reality it's just not getting better as quickly as you want or expect it to. That doesn't mean it's not getting better at all, it just means you're too blinded by all of the ways it hasn't yet to see any of the ways it has. All of the ways I mentioned already to combat a lack of self-esteem causing you to perceive your art as regressing also apply here. Give yourself some credit, accept that art improvement isn't linear, try to find as many things that you like about each piece you finish as things you dislike, and seek feedback from peers less blinded by bias than you are. But another potential solution specific to this particular cause is to consciously and deliberately set more realistic goals for your growth as an artist. If your end goal is to create polished, master-level work and you set no smaller goals between there and where you are now, that single goal may seem so large that it feels insurmountably impossible. But if you set smaller goals between that end goal and where you are now, you can measure your own improvement much more accurately. If all you can see is the massive distance between where you are and where you want to be in terms of artistic growth, you're liable not to recognize and appreciate how many steps you've already taken towards it because they seem negligible compared to how many are left. But if you set smaller goalposts between you and that final destination, like checkpoints in a video game, you can celebrate the fact that you've reached those checkpoints even if you haven't finished the level, so to speak. Setting incredibly ambitious, large growth goals might make you feel like you're getting worse just because you're not meeting them. Setting small growth goals means they're actually demonstrably achievable, which reminds you that you are getting better even if it's not at the rate that you wish you could. The next reason you might feel like your art is getting worse is simply that it isn't getting much better. You may not be experiencing art regression, but rather something many refer to as art stagnation. This is a very normal occurrence and a natural part of any artistic journey, and it usually happens because you've mastered your ability to implement the level of knowledge that you already have in your work, but you haven't started studying anything new to try. Essentially, you've gotten as good as you can get at using the techniques you already know in your art, but you haven't started studying new ones. This results in the quality of your work remaining largely the same indefinitely, with no obvious improvement nor deterioration. But because you were so used to your work consistently improving up until that point, the fact that it stopped doing so now can be perceived by some as it getting worse. In reality, it's just that you're used to consistent improvement and you're no longer seeing it. But that doesn't mean your skills are regressing, it just means you're not actively developing them beyond the plateau you've currently reached. Just because your art isn't getting better doesn't mean it's getting worse. The solution to this issue is honestly pretty dependent on whether or not you view it as an issue in the first place. A lot of artists aren't looking to grow and develop their skills indefinitely and constantly try to improve, and are just drawing to enjoy the experience. In that case, stagnation in their skill level may not be something they view negatively, but rather as them having reached a point where they're happy enough with their skills that they can enjoy making the art that they do, maintaining its level of quality rather than feeling the need to improve it further. Similarly, an artist may simply be too busy to devote more energy and resources into further improving their skills right now, at which point they may accept artistic stagnation as a temporary roadblock on their journey that will remain until they have more time to spend on studying to improve in the future. There are many instances like these in which art stagnation isn't a problem that needs fixing, but rather just a reality that needs accepting. There's no need to beat yourself up or misinterpret that stagnation as regression or the deterioration of your skills simply because you're no longer improving. And if you're happy with your work at the level it's at now, awesome. You don't need to do anything to change that, and you can accept stagnation as the end of your art improvement journey, at least for now, and pat yourself on the back for getting there. After all, your enjoyment of art should be your first and foremost priority, and if you enjoy it as it is now, then there's no need to push yourself to improve further. If you do want to continue to improve, however, then art stagnation can definitely be a problem. In that case, the answer is very simple. Study. Seek out new educational materials, like Skillshare classes, or reliable tutorials. Try out new techniques, experiment with things you've never done, and identify your weaknesses so that you can target them specifically to further improve. If you can't find or notice those weaknesses, talk to your peers, consult trusted experts for critique, and get fresh eyes on your work to tell you all of the ways that you can make it better. Art stagnation is something that almost every artist experiences, often more than once during their artistic journeys, techniques, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. I'm currently in that exact position simply because so much of my time is dedicated to content creation that I have very little left over to dedicate to studying. So art stagnation is something I have to accept right now until that's no longer the case. Just know that when you're ready and able, improvement will be right there waiting for you when you start studying actively again. And the fact that you're not achieving it right now doesn't mean you're regressing or getting worse. Similarly, the next reason you might think you're experiencing art regression is very related, but because you're actually at the step right after art stagnation: study and experimentation. You may have gotten really good at using the skills you've already developed in your work to the point that you're confident in what you create and how you create it, but you've reached a point where the only path to further improvement is to try out new techniques that you're not familiar or confident with, and experiment with learning new things rather than further perfecting the things you already know how to do. It's at this point that artists often end up comparing their ability to use those new techniques to their ability to use the ones they already know, leaving them feeling like their art is getting worse because they're worse at using the new techniques than the old ones. But that's simply not true, and it's just the result of an unfair, unfavorable comparison, even if it's a natural and understandable one to make. After all, it's hard not to get used to certain expectations for quality in your own work. If you've been drawing faces from a direct head-on front view for months, you're gonna get pretty good at that, and subsequently come to expect yourself to be pretty good at that. Because you're able to consistently produce results that meet your quality expectations, you feel successful as an artist. If, in an effort to grow and improve, you start to draw faces from the side, you're suddenly gonna start falling short of the expectations that you'd grown comfortable with meeting because you're developing new skills from the ground up rather than perfecting skills you'd already built a strong foundation for. The end result will suddenly stop being something that you feel confident in and proud of, potentially leaving you feeling like, by comparison to your earlier work where you were drawing things you were already good at, the new work where you're challenging yourself with new things you're not good at yet is worse, and your skills are regressing. Whether you're experimenting with new techniques, new subject matter, or new mediums, you're gonna suck at it at first just like you once sucked at the things you're good at now. Comparing your ability to do something you've done 100 times to your ability to do something you've done twice is just unreasonable, and of course it's gonna make you feel like you're getting worse if you believe that those abilities are one and the same. But they aren't. Your ability to draw front-facing faces perfectly is not diminishing because your ability to draw faces from the side isn't there yet. Being an artist means developing a wide variety of different skills, and your aptitude at each one should be judged individually rather than compared to one another. And that's really the only solution I can offer to this particular cause. Judge your individual artistic skills separately, taking pride in your established ability to draw things you've already gotten good at, independent from your still growing and developing and subsequently temporarily lesser ability to draw things that you're just starting to learn. Your art isn't getting worse because you're trying new things. The end results just may appear worse because you're using new techniques that you haven't perfected yet. If you stick to it, the artistic growing pains will pass and you'll come out the other side as a better, stronger artist. If reminding yourself of that alone isn't enough to make you feel better, you can always try doing a few pieces that don't use those new techniques and solely utilize the ones that you're already confident in. It might help you see that your skill as an artist isn't deteriorating and you're not losing your ability to make work that you're proud of. You're just in the process of developing new ways to do so without losing the old ones. The next reason you may feel your art is getting worse is very closely related to that experimentation, and it's that your style is changing. As a result of experimenting with new techniques and taking influence from new inspirations, your art style is liable to go through many ongoing and consistent changes throughout your lifetime. It may very well be that when you're comparing your current work to your old work, you like your old work more not because it's better, but because you prefer the style that you used to make it. And the changes that your style has been subjected to since then are not changes that you like. Your artistic skills themselves may very well have improved, but you may have started implementing new stylistic elements that aren't working for you, or dropping old ones that did throughout your journey with experimentation, resulting in you feeling like your old work is better even if your new work may very well be more technically proficient. This too is normal and natural. It happens as you try new things. It's not dissimilar to trying new foods. You can't possibly know if you like them until you try them, so trying them is necessary to figure out what you like and what you don't. If I hadn't been deranged enough to dip a cucumber in mustard, I never would have learned that I'm a freak who really likes cucumbers in mustard, and I would have been doomed to live the rest of my life without this delicacy. But when I made my wife try it, she spent the following 3 hours trying to get the taste out of her mouth because I traumatized her taste buds with my new favorite food combo. Trying new things is the only way to find the ones you like that work for you, something that's true about pretty much every aspect of life, including but not at all limited to art. You may end up trying some that you don't like in the process, like my wife trying cucumbers and mustard, and that's okay. It's more than okay. It's valuable. It's worth it to risk trying something you don't like in the pursuit of finding more things you do like, because worst case scenario, now you know, and you can avoid the thing you don't like. Best case scenario, you found a brand new way to improve. That in mind, if you feel like your art is getting worse, carefully and consciously compare your new work to your old work and ask yourself why you feel that way. Do you feel like your new work legitimately shows less technical skill, or do you just not like the direction your style is going in comparatively? If it's the latter, that's awesome. It means your art hasn't gotten worse, you just don't love your new style compared to your old one, and that's an easy fix. Just analyze the stylistic elements you like about your old work that are missing in your new work and try to add them back in new ways. And similarly, analyze the stylistic elements that you've added in your new work that aren't working for you compared to your older work, and do your best to remove them. Your art style is something that's always going to grow and change, and that means growing pains and awkward periods where you're still figuring out what works for you and what doesn't. It doesn't mean you're getting worse, it just means you're discovering a part of your artistic identity, and that takes time. There's another style-related reason you may feel your art is getting worse that's worth mentioning, largely because it's the biggest reason I've noticed artists accusing each other of art regression, that you've just started using a simpler style. Many artists, either consciously or subconsciously, subscribe to some extent to the belief that the more detailed and complex a piece of art is, the better it is. Something that is, in my opinion, fundamentally incorrect. I understand where it comes from, because the ability to accurately depict subject matter with incredible detail and accuracy is more technically impressive on the surface than the ability to depict it simply. Many would argue that the latter requires vastly less skill, an argument that I have some issues with but can't altogether dismiss. To be able to accurately stylize a subject in a simple manner requires a different skill set than the one required to depict it realistically in a detailed manner, but not necessarily a lesser one, especially if it's done intentionally. What I mean is that I understand that point to a degree if it isn't a matter of choice. If the artist is depicting a subject in a very simple style because they don't know how to do so with more detail and complexity, then yes, I would accept the argument that an artist who can do the latter is potentially more skilled. But if they can draw with that detail and complexity and choose to draw in a simpler, more stylized and minimalistic manner, that's not a reflection of lesser skills, it's just a stylistic choice. For me, the work that I do in a highly realistic, detailed style for the sake of studies and personal work alike is actually much more technically proficient than the simpler anime style work that you guys see on this channel, because stylizing is much, much harder for me than realism. So when I see artists be accused of art regression simply because the style that they've switched to is simpler than their previous work, that really irks me, because that's not deterioration of art skills, it's the development of new ones and the valuable exploration of their personal creative preferences. What gets me about that is largely that they've proven that they have enough skill at realism and the fundamentals to draw with more detail and complexity if their earlier work that you're comparing their now simpler work to is more complex and realistic. So the criticism that they're using a simpler style because they're not capable of working in a more detailed one is just kind of astonishing to me, I guess. It is worth noting that adopting a simpler style may, over time, result in the deterioration of your skills at drawing more realistically or with more detail, but we'll get to that later. The point is that, in my opinion, the choice to adopt a simpler art style does not mean you're getting worse as an artist, it means you're experimenting with and finding your identity as an artist by trying out different ways to create. Okay, I got a little heated there, I'm sorry. It's just that a lot of examples that came to mind of artists being dragged for getting worse at art weren't actually getting worse at art, they were just choosing to use simpler styles because that's what they preferred, and it's like, why is that bad? Can we not all just chill? Now other artists are gonna look at that and feel like they can't experiment with simpler styles without facing the same scrutiny and backlash, and that's so creatively limiting and just dumb. It's dumb, and I'm mad about it. Moving on. Another reason you might feel your art skills are deteriorating is that you're just really burnt out. If you've been drawing too much and pushing yourself too hard to improve, it's entirely possible that that obsessive overworking and subsequent burnout might leave you unable to objectively analyze your work's quality anymore, because you've been staring at and hyper-focusing on your art for so long and so relentlessly that you're incapable of viewing it with the fresh, much less critical eyes through which others see it. That's why so many comments on those posts asking, has my art gotten worse, are, dude, no, you're improving. A lot of the artists feeling insecure or anxious about art regression have just been working on their art for so long and with so few breaks that they're unable to see anything but the mistakes anymore. The emotional toll of burnout might also be having an impact, because it's entirely possible that the reason you don't think your art is turning out well isn't that it's actually turning out poorly, but that you're just disillusioned with art as a whole because you've burnt yourself out by making too much. If you're so tired and drained that you can't enjoy making art anymore, it stands to reason that your opinion on your finished work would be similarly negative and cynical. And forcing yourself to draw when you're burnt out and don't want to may also result in a subpar artistic outcome, because you're just not feeling it and not putting your all into it as a result. So it's less that your skills have deteriorated deteriorated and more that your motivation and willpower have. It's kind of like running. If you're an experienced athlete who goes on a run every day with no breaks, it's likely that you'll eventually get worn out and tired to the point that your energy is too low to run as fast or for as long as you normally can. It isn't because your level of fitness has deteriorated, but because you don't have the energy to utilize the full level of fitness that you've developed. I say, as someone who runs every day with no breaks, and I'm somehow still surprised that I'm tired and achy. You get my point. Burnout may be making you feel disillusioned with your work and art in general, leading to an overly critical perception of your skills and too little energy to utilize those skills to their fullest extent. The solution to that is largely dependent on you, because there's no one way to recover from burnout since every artist's circumstances and reasons for getting burnt out in the first place are different. The only generic advice I can offer that might apply regardless of those circumstances is to take more breaks whenever possible, step away from pieces you've been working on for too long and come back with fresh eyes when you're feeling like you hate them, and reflect on what made you love art so much in the first place that you decided you wanted to start making it. You may notice that the aspects of creating art that brought you joy are missing from your current creative process, and that knowledge and introspection may be able to help you shove them right back into it so that you can find the joy in creating art that you used to have. In turn, once the burnout passes and you find yourself with higher energy and more motivation, you may also find that you no longer view your art skills as having deteriorated at all. Finally, the last and biggest reason on this list that you might feel like your art skills are regressing when they aren't is that you're experiencing an art low. Here's a graphic that explains it visually much better than I can with words, but I will still try. Essentially, you may be at a point in your artistic journey where you're now skilled and experienced enough to notice mistakes in your work that you didn't before. Previously, you may have been very confident in your art because you simply didn't have the knowledge to notice the mistakes present in it. But as you've grown, you've developed the insight and understanding to be aware of them and are subsequently feeling insecure. You may feel like you're suddenly making way more mistakes than you ever were before, whereas in reality, you were always making those mistakes, you just didn't notice them. This is a period referred to by that graphic as an art low, which is a point in your journey as an artist where your artistic perception has now developed more than your artistic skill. Throughout our lives, as we study, practice, and learn, artists fluctuate between art lows and highs, periods where we're able to notice mistakes that we couldn't before but don't have the skill yet to correct them, and then periods where we've developed our skills enough to stop making those mistakes, but not our perception enough to notice the new ones. During an art high, your artistic skills have developed more than your artistic perception. You're able to produce work that you're very proud of because your skills have developed faster than your ability to notice mistakes. So since you can't see the shortcomings in your current work, you think it's great. During an art low, your artistic perception has caught up with your art skills and begun to exceed them, meaning that you're skilled enough to recognize mistakes present in it that you couldn't before. It makes you feel like your work has gotten worse, but it hasn't. You're just a better artist now and subsequently able to recognize areas that need improvement, whereas you couldn't before. This is a natural fluctuation, and you're likely to alternate between the two quite frequently over time, and being conscious of that cycle might help you not to get too down on yourself during art lows, or too cocky during art highs. The best advice I can give to anyone listening that might be experiencing an art low that they're interpreting as art regression is to cut yourself some slack and try to remind yourself that the fact that you can now notice and pinpoint your own shortcomings and weaknesses as an artist means you're growing and improving, not deteriorating or regressing. It's a sign of success, not failure, and you can use it to tackle those weaknesses consciously and deliberately so that you can turn them into strengths. Now we've gone over the most likely reasons you might feel like you're experiencing art regression when you really aren't. But as I said in the beginning, art regression is not a myth just because a lot of people who think they're dealing with it aren't. It's very real, and it's entirely possible for your art skills to legitimately deteriorate. That in mind, let's discuss the causes of real, genuine art regression and how to handle or avoid them. The first cause is the simplest, and I'm sure you've already guessed it: a lack of consistent practice. Back when I was in middle and high school, I would have periods of months upon months where I would get super into art and do nothing but draw, throwing myself into studying it and getting better and spending every free moment drawing. I'd learn a bunch of new techniques, practice them, get the hang of them, and then I'd either burn myself out or life would get too hectic and chaotic for me to have any free time anymore. And for one of those reasons or the other, I would stop drawing altogether for another several months. And then all of those new techniques that I just spent so much time and effort learning just fell out of my brain because I hadn't been practicing them for long enough before stopping to retain them properly. And by the time I started drawing again, I had forgotten them and either reverted back to the skill level I was at before learning them or had to work just as hard all over again to relearn them. The more you practice new techniques by using them in new work, the more ingrained in your brain they become, and the less likely you are to forget them even if you don't use them for a while. But if you don't practice them consistently enough before stopping or taking long breaks from art, you're likely to forget them when you do return to drawing. Only being able to remember how to properly utilize the skills that you did practice enough not to forget before those most recently developed ones. If you're not drawing and practicing regularly, you're liable to constantly be playing catch up with trying to relearn skills and techniques that you already learned once but didn't practice enough to develop a full understanding of or remember. before, which can absolutely result in legitimate art regression. The most obvious solution is to draw as consistently as you can. Not every minute of every day, of course, but whenever you have a few free minutes of downtime, try to practice and sharpen your art skills, even if it's just in the form of a messy doodle or a study. Consistent practice is the easiest way to avoid art regression, because it means you're constantly reminding yourself of how to do the things that you've already learned how to. The more you practice them, the less likely you are to forget them and regress, even if you do end up needing to take longer breaks or stop using them for a while. And if you do take a longer break and come back to art feeling like the work that you're making now is worse than it was before, take some time to observe and analyze both your previous and current work to notice the differences between them. That way, you can list the elements from your previous work that you liked that are missing in your current work so that you can add them, and the elements present in your new work that aren't present in your old work that you don't like so that you can get rid of them. Furthermore, it should also help you understand why those elements are missing or changed. Were you using a technique before that you aren't now because you've forgotten it? If so, being able to identify that visually will help you figure out how to relearn it and start using it again. And it's for that exact reason that I always recommend that artists keep a note or folder of the tutorials, resources, and classes that they've used to learn new techniques, so that if they ever forget them or feel that they've gotten rusty, they can easily consult the same learning materials that they used in the first place to hone them all over again. And on the topic of learning materials, another common cause of legitimate art regression is that you might be consulting the wrong ones. Online learning is an immensely valuable resource that offers unlimited educational potential, enabling artists of all skill levels to find free or vastly more affordable alternatives to proper conventional art school. But it's only helpful if the resources those artists are using are accurate. It's wonderful that anyone can create and share educational materials online, but it comes with the downside that those educational materials, without any vetting for accuracy or experience required, may not be fundamentally correct in the first place. If you're following unreliable, under-explained tutorials that either don't give you the full picture required to make proper use of the techniques they teach, or even teach thoroughly incorrect, inaccurate techniques in the first place, it's entirely possible that your art skills will deteriorate simply by way of following bad advice, leaving you unintentionally taking steps backward rather than forward. Similarly, following tutorials that teach correct techniques without explaining how they work or when to use them may result in you using them incorrectly or in the wrong settings, leading to the same result. The solution, though, is as simple as the problem. Make sure you're only consulting resources that you can trust to be reliable, factual, and accurate, and fact-check any art advice that you may feel to be questionable. If you think a tutorial might be wrong or misleading, Google it, ask online, or consult another artist for their opinion. Getting a third party's input is pretty much always helpful, a recurring theme in this video apparently. Finally, the last most common reason I'm aware of that artists may experience art regression is one that we've already touched on. They've shifted to a simpler style. Now, as I've said already, this in and of itself is not necessarily indicative of any deterioration of their skills. Their ability to draw a hyper-realistic, anatomically correct human heart, for example, is unaffected by their choice to draw it like this instead. However, if they were only ever to draw the latter and stop practicing drawing the former altogether, their ability to may eventually deteriorate. It comes down to the same issue as the first reason, a lack of consistent practice. There's nothing wrong with using a simpler style in your work due to preference or experimentation, and doing so does not, on its own, mean your art skills have gotten worse. But if you don't practice anything other than that simplified style, over time, your art skills at drawing anything more complex than that might. As your art style grows and develops, there's nothing wrong with deciding that you prefer a more simplified style that requires you to use less of the techniques and skills that you've developed. But if the consistent and exclusive use of that style means neglecting those now unnecessary techniques and skills altogether, like any skill, they're likely to deteriorate. Drawing only cartoony hands may result in you using your understanding of hand anatomy less, and it diminishing over time as you forget it, for example. Or using simple cell shading may lead to you forgetting how light and shadow interact with forms more realistically. This is only a negative if you ever want to return to a more complex style that requires those skills, of course. If you don't, then the deterioration of those skills may not negatively impact you at all, as you won't need them to continue drawing in your preferred, more simplistic style. But if you do want to maintain them and avoid art regression in the form of your knowledge of now underutilized techniques deteriorating, that's a relatively easy fix. Well, easy if you're someone with a lot of time. Anyway, if you aren't, it's harder, but in my opinion, very worthwhile anyway. You just need to regularly practice using those techniques, either in the form of studies for that purpose or finished pieces. You can use a simplistic style for the majority of your work while still maintaining your understanding of more complex skills and techniques that the simplistic style does not utilize, so long as you're practicing them on your own time. and they may not regress at all even if underutilized if you developed a strong enough understanding of them through consistent practice in the first place. And there we have it. Far too many pages into this script, and we are finally at the end. That seems to be a recurring issue with my recent videos because I just physically cannot stop myself from rambling, but I'm working on it. Hopefully I managed to shed some light on art regression, what it is, what it isn't, and how to avoid it. I honestly think the fear of it is overblown and the use of it as a criticism is misguided and usually incorrect, and I hope this video even vaguely contributes to explaining why. I sincerely don't think art regression is something artists need to spend a lot of time or energy worrying about, because what's most likely is that they aren't experiencing it at all, but are rather struggling with one of the many issues that we discussed already that just look or feel like it. And worst case scenario, even if you are experiencing legitimate art regression, so what? Like any skill, you can relearn anything you've forgotten, and it doesn't matter how many steps you've taken backwards if you're willing to start moving forwards again. Eventually, you won't just be catching up to where you used to be, but advancing beyond it altogether. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Special thank you as always to channel members Joseph Solomon, TC Pratt, Zelda Devorak42, Abyss Reborn, Haruki Kyle, King Good James, Cutie Sailor Lovely, Inside Chaos, CP Little Thing, Art of Amethyst Fable, and Extinction Animation, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Blue Swanson, Cora Fear, Jamisha Walker, Langshi, Kim Yen, Crazy Asar, Gen Tong, Grayson Xavier, MG, Blah Mage, TC Pratt, Finn, Grim Spectre, Celine Merriman, Ash, Eldritchia, The Stray Dog, Allura, Greg Noble, Decagon, Jenny Chan, Captain Reku, Ryan M. Williams, Kappas, Alec Rindakainen, Mac, Lucy Amajiki, Selena Bibi, Pride, Totally Shogun, Insomniac Sleep Schedule, Lola the Pinky, Wing Tang Long, Smiley Boy, and Yosue Garnizo, and I'll see you in the next one.